The boardroom fell silent. 200 eyes fixed on the whiteboard where an 8-year-old girl stood, chalk in hand, solving an equation that had stumped Predictix's entire engineering team for 3 weeks. Elena Whitmore gripped the edge of the conference table. Her daughter wasn't supposed to be here. Sophie had wandered in from the waiting room, looked at the board, and simply walked up and started writing. "Where did you learn this?" Elena's voice came out sharper than she intended. Sophie turned, her small face calm. "Leo in the basement taught me." Elena felt the room shift. "Who's Leo?" Elena Whitmore became CEO of Predictix at 29, the youngest in the company's history. The data analytics firm occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in Manhattan's financial district, where algorithms predicted everything from market trends to government resource allocation. Elena had built her reputation on control, precision, and an almost supernatural ability to see patterns others missed. But there was one pattern she'd learned to hide. At 23, pregnant and abandoned by a man who decided fatherhood wasn't part of his brand strategy, Elena had made a choice. She would succeed not despite being a single mother, but because of the fire it lit inside her. Sophie would have everything. Stability. Opportunity. A mother who never failed. Sophie was 8 now, with her mother's sharp eyes and a quietness that worried Elena more than she admitted. The girl excelled at school but had few friends. She preferred puzzles to playgrounds, numbers to noise. Elena told herself this was fine. Sophie was just focused. Driven. Like her mother. What Elena didn't know was that for the past 4 months, Sophie had been spending her after-school hours in the building's basement level, where Leo Grant mopped floors and emptied trash bins. Leo was 36. With the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen more than most people his age. He wore the gray uniform of building maintenance, moved through halls like a ghost, and spoke only when spoken to. Most employees at Predictix didn't know his name. Those who did never wondered about his story. But Leo had a story. 5 years ago, he'd been Predictix's lead AI systems engineer, the architect behind the predictive models that made the company legendary. He'd also been a father to Tyler, a son born with a congenital heart condition that required constant monitoring and quarterly specialist visits. The night everything changed, Leo had been alone in the server room when he detected an anomaly in the cooling systems. The temperatures were climbing. He'd initiated an emergency shutdown, halting operations across the entire network. The system was saved, but the shutdown had cost Predictix $3 million in lost contracts and penalties. William Chen, the CTO, had needed someone to blame. Leo's emergency protocols had been correct, but the optics were wrong. Within a week, Leo was terminated for unauthorized system interference, causing financial damages. His severance was conditional on a non-disclosure agreement. His references, destroyed. His career in tech, finished. For Tyler's sake, Leo had taken the only job he could find that offered health insurance and flexible hours. The basement of the building, where he'd once held an office on the 15th floor. He'd first met Sophie on a Tuesday evening. She'd been waiting for her mother in the lobby when she noticed him struggling with a rolling cart. Broken glass scattered across the tile. Without a word, the small girl had knelt down and begun carefully picking up pieces, arranging them by size. "You don't have to do that," Leo had said. "I know, but patterns are easier when things are organized." Something in her voice reminded him of Tyler. That same careful logic, that same isolation. He'd pulled a napkin from his cart and drawn a simple logic puzzle on it. "Can you solve this?" Sophie's eyes had lit up for the first time in months. The morning after Sophie solved the impossible equation, Elena stood in her corner office, staring at the employee directory on her screen. Leo Grant. Janitorial services. No photo. No credentials listed. Just a start date from 8 months ago. Her assistant Serena appeared in the doorway. Building management just called. They want to discuss disciplinary action. Against who? The maintenance worker who's been, quote, engaging in unauthorized contact with executive family members. Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. Set up a meeting. I want to talk to him first. The basement level of Predictix smelled like industrial cleaner and old concrete. Elena had never been down here. She found Leo in a storage room, organizing supplies with the same methodical precision her engineers used on code. "Mr. Grant." He turned slowly. No surprise in his eyes. Like he'd been expecting this. "You've been teaching my daughter. I've been answering her questions. There's a difference." Elena's jaw tightened. "You had no right to." "To what? Treat her like she's intelligent? To give her challenges that actually interest her?" Leo's voice was quiet, but firm. "Your daughter is brilliant. Miss Whitmore, when's the last time you asked her what she's curious about?" The words hit harder than Elena wanted to admit. She thought of Sophie's face at dinner last night. Animated. Excited about fractals and recursive patterns. Talking more than she had in years. "Building management wants you written up," Elena said. "They're saying you violated protocols." "I know. Why didn't you tell me who you were?" "That you work here? Would it have mattered?" Elena didn't have an answer. She turned to leave, then stopped. "Stay away from my daughter." Walking back to the elevator, Elena felt a wrongness she couldn't name. Something about the way Leo had looked at her. Not defiant. Not apologetic. Just disappointed. Elena couldn't let it go. That night, after Sophie was asleep, she called Serena. "I need you to pull a complete background check. Leo Grant. Janitor. Started 8 months ago." Serena called back at midnight. "Elena, you need to see this." The file was thin but devastating. Leo Grant, former lead systems engineer at Predictix, terminated 5 years prior for gross negligence resulting in financial losses. The official incident report described an unauthorized emergency shutdown, executed without proper approval protocols. But something was missing. The technical logs. The actual system data from that night. Elena opened Predictix's archive servers, something only she and William had access to. She searched for the date of Leo's termination. The logs were there, but they'd been locked, sealed by executive order. William's order. At 3 in the morning, Elena sat in her dark office, reading code she wasn't supposed to see. She'd bypassed William's lock, using her CEO credentials. The logs told a different story. Temperature sensors showing critical failure. Cooling systems offline. Leo's shutdown had been the only correct response. Without it, the entire server farm would have melted down. The $3 million in losses would have been $300 million in damages. But the official report blamed Leo for the losses, not the faulty cooling system. And it was signed by William Chen. Elena's phone buzzed. A message from building management. "Per your directive, Leo Grant's access has been suspended, pending review." She hadn't given that directive. The next morning, Elena arrived at the office to find William waiting in her conference room with 2 board members. "We need to discuss information security," William said, sliding a folder across the table. "It's come to our attention that you've been accessing sealed personnel files." Elena kept her face neutral. "Those files relate to company operations. As CEO, that's my responsibility." The files were sealed for legal reasons. Opening them creates liability, or reveals it. The board members exchanged glances. William's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm recommending we implement enhanced security protocols. No non-essential personnel should have access to executive floors or family members. It's a liability issue." He was boxing her in. If she fought this, she'd have to explain why she cared about a janitor's personnel file. If she didn't, Leo would be gone. Elena thought of Sophie's face when she talked about fractals, that light in her eyes. "Draft the policy," Elena said quietly. "I'll review it." That afternoon, a company-wide memo went out. New security protocols. Janitorial staff would work overnight hours only. No contact with employees during business operations. Elena told herself it was necessary. Professional. The right thing for the company. She didn't tell herself what it would do to Sophie. Leo received the memo in the basement. He read it twice, then carefully folded it and put it in his locker. He had 2 hours left on his shift. He found Sophie in her usual spot, the small waiting room outside Elena's office, working on a math worksheet that was clearly too easy for her. Hey, Gitto. She looked up, and her smile faded when she saw his face. I won't be around for a while, Leo said quietly. New company rules. Because of me. Because of adults making things complicated. He knelt down beside her chair. But I need you to remember something. Keep learning. Keep asking questions. Not because someone tells you to, not to impress anyone, but because you love it. Because it makes you feel alive. Can you promise me that? Sophie's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Leo stood, his own throat tight. He'd lost his career once. He could survive losing this job. But watching this brilliant little girl dim her own light to fit someone else's expectations, that was harder to walk away from. He left the building that evening and didn't come back. 3 weeks later, Predictix's predictive models started failing. It began small. Market predictions off by fractions of a percent. Resource allocation models showing minor drift. Nothing catastrophic. But Elena saw the pattern. The algorithms were degrading. She called emergency meetings. Doubled the engineering team's hours. Brought in outside consultants. But the drift continued. Whatever was wrong, it was buried deep in the system architecture. At home, Sophie had stopped doing her extra math work. She completed her school assignments with mechanical precision, then sat in her room, staring at nothing. Her teacher called Elena twice. Sophie seems disconnected. She used to volunteer answers, help other students. Now, she barely participates. Elena tried talking to her daughter, asked about school, about friends, about what she wanted to do. Sophie answered in polite monosyllables. The light that had been there for those brief months was gone. One night, Elena found Sophie sitting at the kitchen table, a crumpled napkin in her hands. It was covered in Leo's handwriting. A logic puzzle, half solved in Sophie's careful print. Do you miss him? Elena asked quietly. He made things make sense. Sophie's voice was small. He showed me that smart isn't something you have to hide. Elena felt something crack in her chest. She'd spent 8 years trying to give Sophie everything, but she'd never asked what Sophie actually needed. Serena knocked on Elena's office door the next morning, her face serious. I kept digging into Leo's file. Elena, I think you need to see this. She laid out a series of documents. The original incident report, the insurance investigation, and buried in a subfolder, an email thread from 5 years ago. William to the insurance investigator. We need this closed as personnel error, not equipment failure. Brand protection is critical. The investigator's response. The data shows equipment malfunction. We can't falsify. William, find a way, or find a new client. The final report had blamed Leo. The insurance payout had saved the company's reputation, and William had built his career on that lie. Elena sat back in her chair, rage and shame warring in her chest. She'd protected this. She'd enforced policies that kept the truth buried, and she'd punished Leo all over again, 5 years later. Where is he now? Elena asked. I have an address. Industrial area. About 40 minutes from here. Elena grabbed her coat. Cancel my afternoon. The apartment complex was old but clean, tucked between warehouses in Long Island City. Elena climbed 3 flights of stairs and knocked on door 3C. A boy answered. About 10, thin, with careful eyes that reminded her immediately of Sophie. Is your dad home? Who's asking? Leo appeared behind his son, hand on the boy's shoulder. When he saw Elena, something shifted in his expression. Not quite hope. Not quite resignation. Tyler, go finish your homework. The boy disappeared into another room. Leo didn't invite Elena in. I read the real incident report. Elena said. I know what William did. I know what you saved. That why you're here. Guilty conscience? I'm here because Predictix is failing. The models are drifting. We can't find the source. And I'm here because my daughter hasn't smiled in 3 weeks. Elena's voice cracked. I'm here because I was wrong. And I need your help. Both of you need your help. Leo studied her face for a long moment. What are you offering? Whatever you want. Your job back. Your title. Public vindication. I don't want my old job. Leo leaned against the doorframe. But I have conditions. 3 of them. Elena nodded. I'm listening. 1. No more scapegoating people at the bottom to protect people at the top. Ever. You build a culture of honesty. Or, I walk. Agreed. 2. You open the system logs, all of them. No more sealed files. No more buried truths. If there's a problem, you face it. Elena swallowed hard. Done. 3. Sophie keeps learning. Not for grades. Not for getting into the right school. Not to make you look good. You let her explore math. Because it makes her happy. And if she decides she hates it tomorrow, that's okay too. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. I can do that. Leo finally stepped aside. Then I guess we have work to do. The war room was established in a rarely used conference space on the 2nd floor. Elena, Leo, Serena, and a small team of engineers who'd been with the company since the beginning. People who remembered Leo. People who'd wondered what really happened. Elena had also invited someone else. Miss Patricia Hewitt, Sophie's 3rd-grade teacher. A woman who'd actually noticed when a brilliant child started dimming her light. I don't understand why I'm here, Patricia said, looking around at the screens and code. Because this isn't just about fixing a system, Elena said. It's about fixing everything we broke. Leo pulled up the system architecture on the main screen. The drift is happening in the predictive layer. The algorithms are making assumptions based on outdated training data. But the issue isn't the code. It's the philosophy. He opened a folder of old design documents, notes from 5 years ago when he'd built the original system. I designed these models to adapt, to learn, to question their own assumptions. But after I left, someone locked them into rigid patterns. They stopped evolving. Elena felt the metaphor hit home. For 3 days, they worked. Leo walked them through his original design philosophy, explaining each decision not as a technical choice, but as a way of thinking. How systems, like people, needed room to question, room to adapt, room to be wrong. He taught the same way he taught Sophie. Not with lectures, but with questions. With napkin diagrams and simple examples. With patience. On the 4th evening, Tyler and Sophie arrived. Leo had arranged it with Elena. The kids sat in the corner working on homework together. But really, they were working on something Leo had sketched out. A logic puzzle. A game. Elena watched her daughter lean over the paper, pointing something out to Tyler. Sophie was explaining. Teaching. Her face alive with excitement. Miss Hewitt sat down beside Elena. You're a good mother who made a common mistake. What's that? You tried to protect her from struggle. But struggle is how we learn who we are. Elena wiped her eyes. I'm learning that. By the end of the week, Leo had identified the core problem. But the solution would require rebuilding significant portions of the system. And they had a major client presentation in 6 days. A government contract worth $40 million. We can do it, Leo said. But I need full access. Including the secure servers. Elena hesitated for only a moment. Then she handed over her credentials. That night, as she was leaving, Sophie ran up and hugged her. Thank you for bringing him back, Sophie whispered. Elena held her daughter tight. Thank you for showing me I needed to. William discovered what was happening on day 5. Someone from the engineering team had let it slip in a casual conversation. By the time Elena arrived at the office the next morning, there was an emergency board meeting already scheduled. William stood at the head of the table, 3 board members flanking him. You brought Leo Grant back into this building. You gave him access to secure systems. You did this without board approval and in direct violation of his termination agreement. Elena set her bag down calmly. I did. Because our systems are failing, and he's the only one who knows how to fix them. He's a liability. His termination was legally sound. If he causes another failure, he didn't cause the first failure. Elena pulled out her tablet. I have the original incident reports. The real ones. The ones you buried. William's face went pale. You falsified an insurance claim. You destroyed a man's career to protect the company's reputation. And then you locked away the evidence. One of the board members leaned forward. Is this true, William? It was 5 years ago. The decision was made in the company's best interests. The decision was made to save your job, Elena said quietly. And I'm done protecting it. William's expression hardened. If you proceed with this presentation using Leo Grant, I will resign, and I will take this entire situation to the press. Predictix will be drowning in lawsuits and PR disasters instead of celebrating a government contract. He pulled out his phone. I've also taken the liberty of updating our security systems. Leo Grant's biometrics have been flagged. If he tries to enter the building, security will remove him. If he tries to access our servers remotely, the system will lock him out. Elena felt the trap close around her. The presentation was tomorrow. Without Leo, they couldn't complete the system repairs. Without the repairs, they'd lose the contract. And William knew it. She looked at Serena, who was pale but determined. At the board members, who were calculating political angles. At her phone, where a text from Sophie glowed. Mom, count your breaths like Leo taught me. Then decide. Elena had spent her entire career protecting her position, playing it safe, making the smart political choice. She stood up. Then you better start writing your resignation letter, William, because Leo Grant is presenting tomorrow, and so am I. The presentation hall held 200 people. Government officials, potential clients, tech press, board members. Elena stood backstage, her hands shaking. Serena appeared beside her. William's here. He brought reporters. Of course he did. Leo's biometrics are still blocked. Security won't let him past the lobby. Elena closed her eyes. Then she pulled out her phone and opened the emergency broadcast system. Company-wide announcement. She typed. In 5 minutes, in Conference Hall A, Predictix will present our updated predictive systems. The presentation will be led by the man who built them. The man who saved them 5 years ago. The man we failed to protect. Leo Grant. If you're watching this, use my credentials. Elena Whitmore, CEO. Come take back what's yours. She sent it. The hall went quiet as Elena walked onto the stage. Thank you for being here. Today, we're going to show you something remarkable. But first, I need to tell you a truth we've been hiding. For 3 minutes, Elena told the story. The equipment failure, the emergency shutdown, the false report, William's cover-up, her own complicity in perpetuating it. The room was dead silent. The man who saved our systems 5 years ago is here today, and he's going to show you what real integrity looks like. The back doors opened. Leo walked in, Tyler and Sophie beside him. He'd worn a suit, not expensive, but clean and professional. The man he'd been before everything fell apart. He walked to the stage, and Elena stepped aside. Leo connected his laptop to the system. Good morning. My name is Leo Grant, and I'm going to show you how we fix something that never should have broken. For the next 40 minutes, Leo walked through the system architecture. He explained the drift, the failure points, the solution. But more than that, he explained the philosophy. How predictive systems, like people, need the freedom to question their assumptions. How security comes from transparency, not secrecy. How the strongest systems are built on truth. He demonstrated the repairs in real time, pulling up live data feeds and showing how the models now adapted, learned, corrected themselves. It was brilliant, clear, undeniable. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Serena stepped forward with a laptop. Before we take questions, there's one more thing. She projected an email chain onto the screen. William's orders to bury the truth. His threats to the insurance investigator. His systematic destruction of Leo's career. William Chen is no longer with Predictix, Elena said quietly. He's been referred to our legal team for investigation. We're committed to making this right. The government contract officer stood. Miss Whitmore, Mr. Grant, I think we have everything we need. Expect our signature by end of week. That evening, Elena found Leo in the now empty war room, packing up his notes. The board wants to offer you Chief Technology Officer. Full equity. Public apology. Whatever you need. Leo shook his head. I appreciate it. But that's not what I want. Then what? You have 300 employees in this building. How many of their kids have somewhere to go after school? Somewhere they can explore what interests them, not just what tests well. Elena thought about it. I don't know. Maybe none. I want to start a program. Free classes for employee children. Math, science, art, whatever they're curious about. No grades, no pressure, just exploration. Leo smiled. I want to call it Sophie's Lab. Elena felt her throat tighten. That's a terrible use of company resources. Probably. The board will think I'm insane. Definitely. When can you start? Sophie's Lab opened 6 weeks later in a renovated space on the second floor. Tyler and Sophie were the first students, but within a month, 23 children were attending. Kids of janitors and executives alike. Learning together. Questioning together. Leo taught 3 evenings a week. Other employees volunteered to lead sessions on their own expertise. The company accountant taught financial literacy using Pokemon cards. A graphic designer taught visual storytelling. A security guard who'd once been a chef taught kitchen chemistry. Elena started leaving work at 5:30 to pick up Sophie. They'd walk home together, and Sophie would talk about what she'd learned. About fractals and fractions and the way Tyler explained astronomy using gummy bears. One evening, Sophie mentioned a competition, Math in Motion. You build something that demonstrates a mathematical concept. Tyler and I want to enter together. What are you going to build? Sophie pulled out a napkin, creased and worn. The first logic puzzle Leo had ever given her. We're going to turn it into a kinetic sculpture. Something you can touch and solve and watch. Move. Is that okay? Elena looked at her daughter's bright eyes, at the careful sketch she'd been working on, at the pure joy of creating something just because it mattered to her. It's more than okay. It's perfect. The Math in Motion finals were held in a university auditorium. Elena sat in the audience between Leo and Miss Hewitt, watching Tyler and Sophie carefully position their sculpture on the demonstration table. They'd built it from reclaimed materials. Old computer parts from Predictix's recycling. Gears and wires and LED lights. But arranged into something beautiful. A mechanical puzzle that moved when you solved each logic gate, lighting up in patterns that demonstrated recursive algorithms. The judges circled, asking questions. Tyler explained the engineering. Sophie explained the math. Together, they showed how it worked. When the results were announced, they took first place. Sophie stepped to the microphone for the winner's speech. Elena's heart swelled. People think the best teachers wear suits and stand at the front of classrooms, Sophie said. Her voice small but clear. But the best teacher I ever had wore a gray uniform and asked me questions on napkins. He taught me that being smart isn't something you hide or use to prove you're better than someone. It's something you share. It's something that makes you braver. She looked at Leo. Thank you for teaching me to ask questions, for teaching me that it's okay to not have all the answers. Then she looked at her mother. And thank you, Mom, for learning too. Elena wiped her eyes. Around her, parents and teachers were crying too. After the ceremony, as they walked to the car, Sophie slipped her hand into Elena's. Are you proud of me? She asked. Elena stopped. She knelt down, eye level with her daughter. I've always been proud of you. But I'm learning that my pride isn't what matters. What matters is that you're proud of yourself. That you know who you are, and what makes you light up. That's the real achievement. Sophie hugged her. Over her daughter's shoulder, Elena saw Leo and Tyler waiting by the car, a janitor and his son. The people who'd taught her what success actually looked like, not the corner office or the government contracts or the stock price, but this moment, this connection, this truth. She'd spent a decade building an empire of predictions, but the most important thing she'd ever learned couldn't be predicted or controlled or planned. It could only be lived. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep, Elena stood in the doorway of her daughter's room. The walls were covered with drawings now, logic puzzles and mathematical patterns and sketches of the kinetic sculpture, a map of a mind that was finally free to explore. On Sophie's desk, that first napkin sat framed, a reminder of where it all started, a janitor and a little girl, a simple question, a willingness to see someone for who they really were. Elena had thought her greatest achievement was becoming the youngest CEO in Predictix's history. She'd been wrong. Her greatest achievement was learning to be the mother Sophie needed, learning to value truth over reputation, learning to see the janitor in the basement as the hero he'd always been. The predictive models could forecast market trends and resource allocation. But they couldn't predict this, the way a napkin puzzle would save a company, the way a little girl's question would expose a 5-year lie, the way the greatest minds aren't always in the corner offices. Sometimes they're in the basement. Sometimes they're 8 years old. Sometimes they're waiting to be seen. Elena turned off the light and whispered into the darkness. "Thank you, Leo, for teaching us both." Somewhere across the city, in a small apartment in Long Island City, Leo tucked Tyler into bed. "Dad, are you glad you went back?" Leo thought about it. About the years of mopping floors. About the vindication that had come too late. About the little girl who'd seen him when no one else had. "Yeah, kiddo, I am. Because they gave you your job back? Because I remembered who I was. And because I got to help someone else remember who they were too." Tyler smiled. "Sophie's pretty cool." "Yeah, she is. Now go to sleep." But as Leo walked to his own room, he paused by the window. The city glowed in the darkness. Somewhere in those lights was Predictix, was Sophie's lab, was a future neither he nor Elena could have predicted. The best things in life, he'd learned, couldn't be predicted. They could only be built. One question at a time, one truth at a time, one napkin at a time. And that was enough.